Thank you for joining me here at the Morse Force. Chuck Morse, author, former talk show host. I think it's safe to say that the Democrats are going to play some kind of an October surprise with just 3 weeks left before the midterm election, and that it's going to be ugly. It's almost predictable. It's like a broken clock. You know they're going to get there. They already tried the Kavanaugh fiasco. Didn't work for them. So what'll it be? How are they going to gin up their hateful base with this big, hateful technology? We're all going to hate Trump for the day, a new outrage, a new horror. Trump said something that insulted someone, and they're going to spend a whole week screaming about it like the Salem witch trials, witch! And stimulating that little computer chip that seems to be implanted in the back of their brains to make them, motivate them and get them out to vote. The question is, what is it going to be, not when is it going to be? And from what I can tell, it's going to be that they're going to play the anti-Semitism card. Now, when I say anti-Semitism, I'm not saying that they're going to accuse Republicans of being anti-Semites. Oh, no. They're going to use anti-Semitism to attack the Republicans amongst their own base. Now, I'm going to give an example here of what I see coming down the pike, and that is yesterday's New York Times did a big front page article with bold letters. Jared Kushner paid no federal income tax for years, documents suggest. Like the word suggest there. And then this was echoed in CNN. New York Times, Kushner likely paid almost no federal income taxes for years. And, the New York Times, again, they did another story, how Jared Kushner avoided paying taxes, which, by the way, we all do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to avoid taxes. It's called tax avoidance. And there's a difference, by the way, between tax avoidance and tax evasion. When we file our tax returns, we hire an accountant to do a Schedule C to take a look at our deductions. That's tax avoidance. That's legal. It's proper, actually. That's how the system works. Now, locally, you had King 5 echoing the New York Times, almost no federal taxes. And WGRZ-TV, Kushner has paid, quote, almost no federal taxes. So all of these syncopatic left-wing media outlets are taking their cues from the New York Times to attack Jared Kushner for almost certainty that he paid no taxes. Now, if you look into the article, the first line says that Jared Kushner probably did not pay federal income taxes for several years. Now, what do they base that on? Because the front page article is he paid no income taxes. This is what, by the way, Harry Reid tried to do or did do to Mitt Romney in 2012. He came out, strutted out of his office, and declared to the media, Mitt Romney has not paid taxes in 10 years. Then after there was an outcry about it, because it was obviously false, he then backtracked a few days later. But the damage was done. And when Harry Reid was retiring 5 or 6 years later, he was asked by a reporter, why did you say that about Mitt Romney? I mean, how could you have made such a false statement? And Reid's response was, well, it worked, didn't it? It was successful, which it goes to show you how venal these people are. But if you look in the article, you'll see in the first line that it says he probably or likely paid no taxes. Now, what do they base that on? First of all, they don't have his tax returns because that's confidential. So what happened is that Jared Kushner, years before Trump was president, applied for a loan at some New York bank. And in the process of that application, he provided financial information going back many years on his income. That is supposed to be confidential. Think about how you'd feel if you knew that you went to your local bank and applied for a loan, and they released your private information, your forms, to the press or to someone else or to your enemies. Well, what happened is that some banker at this bank, we don't know the bank, we don't know the banker, went ahead and leaked this information to the New York Times. And then the New York Times brought in 3 experts who analyzed it, and these were not even his tax returns. And they said, well, based on this information, it's very likely that Jared Kushner paid little or no taxes over these number of years. And then they followed it up by saying that nothing illegal had happened. This is what you're supposed to do. This is tax avoidance. Accountants try to find ways to reduce your tax. So there was this is not suitable for a big, flashy front page article in the New York Times, since there's no crime accused, no crime committed, and the information they received was through illegal means. Now, Jared Kushner would be right to sue the New York Times for this and to demand to find out who this leaker was. And if that leaker was identified, that person could go to jail. I mean, this is illegal. You don't release that information. It's protected. It's confidential. But the leaker and the bank or whoever's behind this and the New York Times is gambling on the fact that Kushner is not going to do that because he's too busy dealing with other things. So his office simply sent out a statement, and the New York Times published it saying this is bogus and that this information was obtained illegally, and they're leaving it at that. But the damage is out there. This is how they're going to attack President Trump, that he is surrounded by people who are rich and who are not paying their fair share in taxes. And, it so happens that Kushner and his daughter, his wife, obviously related to Trump by marriage and by the fact that he's married to Trump's daughter. But the significant aspect for me is the fact that Kushner is very publicly Jewish. He identifies as a Jew, indeed as an Orthodox Jew. He was an observant Jew, and he's involved in Israel affairs. So in the public mind, he is identified as a Jew, and he is being called out by the New York Times as being not only rich, which of course he is because he's a businessman and a very successful one, but that he's done something to cheat people. He's not paying his taxes. And my suggestion is that this gets to anti-Semitism on the left and amongst the population in general. They're going to look at this and say, look, Trump is surrounded by rich Jews who are ripping us off, who are conspiring to take advantage of us. It's feeding into the worst and the most ugly forms of anti-Semitism. That, first of all, there's something wrong with being rich, which in this country, we honor that. But secondly, the fact that he happens to be of Jewish background gives them, they're able to kind of stimulate that little trigger of anti-Semitism as a way to galvanize the vote and to get people out voting against the Jews who are surrounding Donald Trump because he's controlled by Jews. And so that's in a nutshell what's going on here. The fact that the New York Times, which is the paper of note, and all the liberal sycophants at CNN and everywhere else gave this story such prominence is just a little, Vorspice, if you don't mind my saying, a little taste of what we can expect in the coming weeks as we get closer to the midterm. I would predict that probably the big hit piece is going to come out maybe a week before the election, the one which they're going to spend hour after hour, day after day, gnashing teeth and screeching like a bunch of, like the young women at the Salem witch trials, in Massachusetts. It's a witch. And with the hope of really ginning up such a crescendo of hate and exploiting such a level of ignorance and bigotry that maybe they could turn the tide and win the election. So watch out for that. I don't know what it's going to be. I'd like to hear from viewers to this program or in general what they think the October surprise is going to be. But I don't think there's any question that it's coming down the pike and it's going to be ugly. And that, the left, if you don't think the left is anti-Semitic, you can look at the history of that. They tie the Jews in with capitalism and profit and making money, which are all good things in America, and which, the Jews certainly are involved in, at least, to a degree that they are, and that's great. And they're going to hold that up, though, as being some kind of a conspiracy to rip people off. It gets into the grand conspiracy of Marxism, which is that somehow people who are successful are exploiters. They're only successful because they've ripped off other people, not because they earned anything, and that they're conspiring to keep other people down because with this whole false consciousness. Anyway, I'll leave that there. But I want to thank you for watching. I'd like to hear from people about what you think is going to be the big October surprise. I think it's going to be, it might either be a big splash or it might just be a quiet drumbeat of anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. Check out my books. They're available at Amazon.com. Chuck Morse, Morse. And thank you for watching, everybody.